You know that moment when you realize the people you admire just didn't wake up successful? They figured it out as they went? That's the part no one really talks about. So I am talking about it. I'm Jeannie Walden, and this is Liftoff Journeys. This is where I sit down with leaders, founders, and executives to talk about how they actually became the people they are today. We skip the titles, we skip the bios, we focus on the choices, the detours, and the instincts that shape their journey. Because when you understand how someone else navigated their career, it changes how you think about your own. Let's see where today's journey takes us. Welcome back to Liftoff. I'm Jeannie Weldon, your host, and today I am so excited to have Karen Thomas on with us. Karen Thomas is the founder and CEO of a company called Naturally Recovering Autism. Now, before you ask me, Karen actually created this company out of a need that she found with her son. After 15 years of research, she brought her own son to recovery from his symptoms of autism through all natural resources, which I just think is fabulous. Once her son recovered, she knew she had to share her experiences with all of us and everybody else out there and tie that in with her years of research so that other parents can help untangle the whirlwind of information and offer safe, effective, natural resources for autism recovery for 3 decades. Karen, that sounds like a long time. And I just think it was probably last week because you look so amazing. But for 3 decades, Karen has been board certified. She's been board certified as an instructor of craniosacral therapy. Her holistic background and study of the human brain has proved essential when her own son was diagnosed with autism in 2006. It is because of Karen's personal research that she was driven to find an all natural approach to recover her own son from these symptoms. And now, like I said, she's going to be talking with us today about how her journey and business experience led her to the point where she could find a solution not only for her son, but for anybody who is impacted with the effects of autism at any part of the spectrum. And she's got so many great resources to share with us. So, Karen, welcome to Liftoff.
Hi, Jeannie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. I do have a lot to share with people, so it's nice to be able to, have more avenues for more people who are in need to know that these solutions exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can only imagine that you've become, one of the most trusted resources for any parent of a child that is on the autism spectrum. I know that an association we both belong to, the IAOTP, or International Association of Top Professionals, has named you Top Autism Specialist of the Decade. I mean, that must feel great to know you're helping so many people.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And it helps with the credibility as well, because there are a lot of people out there who are just putting this and that out, even people who are practitioners and supposed to be experts that really don't know what they're doing. And I can share my story, but that's kind of how I came to find the solutions for myself. So it's nice for people to know that the track record that I have from sharing the solutions that I offer with other parents, that they've had such success with it as well.
Yeah, it must be so exciting to wake up every day and know that you're helping so many people. But let's go back a little bit to where you started your career. When you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
It's funny. When I was a pretty young child, my parents were water skiers and athletic, and we'd go out, and everybody's shoulders would, they'd be like, they'd have me massage their shoulders because I had really strong hands, and they're like, "Oh, Karen, you should be a physical therapist." So this was kind of put into my head from a very early age, and I was always kind of just naturally interested in health. And I didn't grow up with a lot of holistic health knowledge at all. That came later in my life. So I originally was going for physical therapy in college, and then I ended up working as a back office assistant for an applied kinesiology chiropractor. And then she taught me all about holistic health. And then she said, Karen, why don't you become a massage therapist, get your license, and then I can start billing through you, and we can, have you be, we need an on-site massage therapist. So I went to massage school, got licensed for that. And after seeing, clients for you know, even the first couple of years, I thought, boy, I see so much of this is emotionally based. And, you know, the physical issues that people were dealing with. I thought I know there's a deeper way to reach the system. And so I was really just kind of putting that energy out there, like, bring me something that helps me help people even more so. Like, that's what I've always like, what else can I do? And that's when I just randomly got something in the mail about this instructor who's very world well known now. It was even then, who was teaching a beginning craniosacral class. And so I went to that, and it was like everything I'd been looking for. And I continued on with him, the Milne Institute with Hugh Milne for years as a student, helping assist classes. Of course, went through his whole certification program, which is quite rigorous. But through all of that, I learned so much more about holistic health and the brain, how the brain could heal. And I loved the work, and I practiced craniosacral work for, like it says now, about 30 years. And so it did prove to be very helpful, just having the knowledge of holistic health, you know, nutrition and detoxification and all these other things that are going on that people aren't really aware of. I had a lot of knowledge of it when my son was diagnosed with autism, but I didn't know that much about autism specifically. So that's when my own research began. And that now was 17 years ago.
It's so interesting that your path started with an interest in health and just helping people, and you've been able to translate that over the years into what it's become today. And so when you started researching autism, were there a lot of resources out there? You know, back in 2006, Facebook was, just starting, there were probably Yahoo groups. Did you find yourself reaching out to other parents that were affected? How did you really start to gain more information about autism?
Well, as you can imagine, back then, there really wasn't a lot of information available. In fact, we started taking my son to therapists when he was 5. And for 5 years, we went to multiple therapists who just kept telling us that it was our fault as parents, the way he was behaving, that if we were firmer with discipline, he wouldn't behave that way. It was just horrific. And we thought, so we tried different discipline things, everything you can imagine. Nothing is working. There's more going on here. I just knew it. He was my firstborn, but I thought something's not right. And he had pretty extreme symptoms. Even in kindergarten, he was getting in trouble in the classroom and couldn't sit still and just disruptive. And he really had such a sweet heart. Also, you could see it, and he's so bright. And we thought, we need to find out what's going on so we can help him. Over and over, 5 years later, he was almost 10. He was actually right at almost 10 years old when he was finally diagnosed. And the guy who diagnosed him, the therapist at the time, said, I think he has autism. He said, I don't really know that much about it. Thankfully, he admitted, and you'll have to go research it for yourself. And I don't even have any books on it. And fortunately, I was going up to Berkeley, California that next weekend for another craniosacral course, because that's where I took a lot of my courses. And being a college town, University of Berkeley, there are a lot of bookstores, because I went to the bookstore where I lived and there were no books on autism at the time. And I thought, well, how do I research this? And so the internet was, there, but I was kind of just getting my feelers out. And then I went up to this bookstore, the first bookstore I saw, and I walked in. It was a small corner bookstore too. And I said, do you have any books on autism or Asperger's at all? Because, and she said, oh yeah, the owner's son has it. So we have a couple of them. And yeah, right. No coincidences. The first book I opened up, and it was like I was reading about Jacob, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is what is happening. And so what do I do? And of course, it's a spectrum. No two kids are the same. So, well, he has this and this, but he doesn't really do that, but he does this and that, so I went home, and a friend of mine our sons were actually in the same class. This was now in first grade, and our kids were in the same class. And I said, she was a pediatric neurologist, and she was a friend of mine. and her son had autism, and he was in Jacob's class, and I just knew her son had autism. So that's really why. So I said, who do you go to find out about this? And she said, there's a specialist, 30 minutes away. She told me where to find the person, and they're the ones that need to diagnose it. So that's where I found you really have to know specialists in that area, so they really know. So she went through the process, and she said, yeah, he has autism. And we were just like, there's like all the emotions, the grief, the frustration, the worry. But then it was also, okay, we have an answer. So what are the solutions? A sense of relief to some extent as well. And she said, I really don't have, anything to tell you. There's a social behavioral therapist you can try. That was it. That person told me I should drug him, and I was doing a disservice to him and being a bad parent for not drugging him. And I was like, these are the answers people are getting? I mean, what are the solutions? So I tried practitioners and various ones over and over, all different things. I was really trying, and I realized after a period of time and spending a lot of money, these people don't know what they're doing, and I need to figure this out for myself. So I began my own research, and I read countless books, searched the internet for countless hours, spent over $100,000 of my own money over the time period of just trying to implement things, trial and error to figure it out. And it took me about a decade. But today, my son is no longer even diagnosable with autism. His symptoms are gone. He's a college graduate. He lives on his own with friends, a happy, healthy life, right? And I always tell everybody, your child's level of recovery, everybody's level of recovery is different. But kids who, parents were told their child would never speak, and they've tried other practitioners and tried things. One mom, her son was 27 when she came into, I have a membership program where I walk them step by step through this process. Her son was 27 when she came to my program, and she had tried so much, just like I had. Nothing had worked for her. Within less than 2 months, her son, who had been nonverbal still at the age of 27, was talking and reading books with her. And, these are the kinds of things over and over that are happening. And so that's why I just want as many parents, and 1 in 30 children today are being diagnosed with autism. And after it was so challenging for me, and I took so much of my time and effort and expense, I thought, I've got to create a program or something where I can share this with other parents. So that's how this all came to be. And I wanted to simplify the process, give them a step-by-step guide. I've weeded out all of the products that don't work, and I just narrow it and streamline for what exactly does. And then I walk them through what I call the 4 stages of optimum autism recovery, so they can get the best results, so their kids can live happier, healthier lives, and they get the support they need, because the parents don't have a lot of support. And if you have never had a child with autism yourself, it's really hard to understand the intensity of that, living with it 24/7 and the worry that goes on for your child. So my hope is to give them the support and the relief, but also get them the steps that can get them results that they're looking for.
I love that. I love everything that you said. And I know we've talked earlier, my master's is in teaching, my minor is in sign language, and I worked with some more severely diagnosed autistic children when they were 2 and 3, and leveraged sign language as a way to just communicate, which was, they're just, kids with autism have the sweetest hearts, and they're so kind, and they really are just looking for ways to communicate so effectively. It just is, it's so endearing. And my little nephew is autistic as well. And I just think there's so much potential, because you're right. It's, for a parent, it must be extremely stressful. One of my children who's adopted from Russia has ADD pretty severely. I mean, she's also grown out of it as she's gotten into college, but it's a lot to handle. So based on your perspective, what do you think the biggest misconception or misunderstanding about autism is that's out there right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer, that, because I'm asked this all the time, the answer is that parents learn about diet or gluten-free, casein-free diet, and they hopefully do that because it does matter. It's very important, but there's so much more to the diet aspect than that. And the whole gut healing and supporting detoxification, and then moving on to the other stages, which we could talk about as well. But they think that the biggest problem is that parents think that diet alone is all there is, that and they don't know what else to do. And there's quite a bit more involved.
And so you've written a book, Naturally Recovering Autism, a complete step-by-step resource handbook for parents. And I know it's been very helpful for the parents that have read it. I've spent some time on your website. I've looked at the testimonials, and like I said, it's huge kudos to you for everything that you're doing. But is this a book that you would recommend also to family members of people whose sister or cousin might have a child with autism or might have autism themselves? Is it also helpful for the supporting family community?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my husband calls it a holistic health Bible, which is pretty much, it tells you everything you need to know about holistic health and detoxification and diet and everything else. But I think the more educated family members are, the more support they might offer, because they start to recognize the underlying health issues that are going on, that are actually the causes of the inflammation on the brain and why these behaviors exist. It's not something that the child is really in control of. Even in therapies and behavioral types of therapies, which I ended up having to pull my son out of because they weren't working. And he used to say, "Mom, I want to, but I can't. Why can't I?" And it was just heartbreaking to hear him say that. And his self-esteem was getting affected. And he's brilliant. I mean, these kids are so smart, and they deserve to have their abilities be free so they can share their gifts with the world. And so that's where I think if people really understand what is going on, these underlying, again, causes is what we need to work with, not just mask the symptoms, and understand what's going on for the child, they will have more empathy and understanding for the family members as well. And then I'm always saying, for people, especially who join into my membership program, I always say the whole family should go through this program together, because we spread toxin, we spread co-infections and other pathogens around the household to each other. So if one person, like say mom's working really hard with the child with autism and they're getting better, but then mom and dad or siblings have things that they're spreading back and forth, then it keeps those things going on in the household and makes it harder for everybody to get better. So it's important for the whole family to get healthy as well. And there are usually underlying causes going on for one or both of the parents, and often even the children. We can pass toxins and co-infections and other things in utero. So, often, mom's body has had things that she's passed on. So, we want to help take care of everybody, especially the caretakers. They need to be around and be happy and healthy and be able to handle this challenging situation and live happy, healthy lives too.
I love that. So I've spent some time on your website. You've mentioned a few times that you have a membership program. You also have a significant number of free resources that I think help educate and drive awareness for somebody who might be working with a child or know somebody's child that has autism somewhere on the spectrum. But let's talk about your membership program a little bit. How does it work? Do people join forever? You've got 4 modules. Is it an ongoing kind of support system and then turns into a community? Is it a lot of directed kind of direction and support? Let's hear about the program.
It's all of the above. Support is very important. And I know questions come up along the way. So there's a forum inside where if a parent has a question, they can ask me anytime, 24/7. They can ask me a question and I get back to them within 24 hours in the forum. And we have them ask their questions there. So all of the other community members can read those questions and answers, because the wealth of information in there is so helpful for so many, because the questions are often the same, or somebody, if they don't have that question yet, they likely will in the future. So that way it helps them to learn. But I do walk them through step by step in a sequential order from A to Z. So we cover everything from diet and detoxification. And as I mentioned, my background, I've taken so many courses and workshops and everything over the years, especially for calming, other thing, mindset. I work with everything to support the whole system, but in a sequential order, step by step from A to Z. Again, it's way to follow through on what supplement to add in next, how to do it, what dosage, how to back off if you get die-off symptoms, which are really common, and most parents are not even informed about it, with other even practitioners' hands, a bunch of supplements, and your kid can get really, really bad and worse way before they get better, because their detoxification systems have to be supported. So we cover everything from diet and gut healing that's absolutely necessary, because the gut does control the brain and the immune system. Then we move on to safe and natural, very easy, simple, heavy metal detoxification. Then we move on to clearing the co-infections, which are very, very commonly missed. And I think why most kids plateau on the recovery process, because the tests for a lot of these are very inaccurate. So Lyme, mold biotoxins, parasites, PANS, which is pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric syndrome, and strep, all of these things, the testing is very inaccurate. So it's likely that a parent could get a negative test result for their child when they're actually positive. And if they do get a positive test result, they're usually just thrown a bunch of antibiotics. They're not worked with properly, and the child gets worse, doesn't get better. So that, and then once you've cleared out the inflammation on the brain and brought health back to the system and the body, and it's not trying to work, the brain isn't trying to work under all of those inflammations and infections, then you can get into brain support and repair, which is stage 4, where there are some natural ways to help balance the brain where it became imbalanced or miswired during development, while all of those toxins and pathogens and the infections and everything, the inflammation was in the way. So yeah, I know it is a lot, but I have simplified the process with very short videos to educate enough, PDFs, guides to help them, especially, over the years. Programs have been going for about 7 years now, saying, of course, lots of questions around, say, constipation and speech came in. So I thought, okay, I want to make a PDF guide for this, or put it in the frequently asked question area. So I've covered pretty much everything in there. So usually their questions are answered. They just follow the sequential order. But then, of course, the forum is there for them to ask me questions and get support if they fall into a challenge and they need some troubleshooting help or have a question. I'm there for them. So it's just a way to make sure that nothing important gets left out too.
Yeah, it sounds so comprehensive. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about one of my kids is sick all the time. I mean, even though she's in her 20s, she still just falls prey to illness. I'm wondering if the program can also address other issues that are not on the autism spectrum. That's great from a detox standpoint, just kind of a resetting to reduce any of the brain inflammation and the challenges that we just have in our normal day-to-day environments. Has anybody asked you that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Is this good for ADD, ADHD? What about it? Yeah. So it definitely is. I mean, all of these things are there are underlying causes. So again, we don't want to just mask symptoms when something happens to us or our children. We want to find out what's the cause, and what my program does specifically too is really that A to Z. You're covering everything that the biology needs to work and function at optimum. So that's why like I mentioned earlier, like healing the gut. Well, so many people don't realize how much the gut controls the brain. And there are brain messengers called neurotransmitters made in the gut. So if the gut's not working well, then the brain can't get those messengers for things like mood regulation, sleep regulation, appetite, being able to focus and concentrate. So a lot of that can come from the gut. And then close to 80% of the immune system's strength and ability comes from the gut as well. So as you're saying, she gets sick. Well, so what's going on? What are the underlying causes? Is she toxic? Does she have toxins? Most of us have heavy metal toxicity. Our world today is just very, very toxic. Aluminum, I've interviewed experts on my website, on my podcast, and anyone can go to my website and get, again, like you said, my blog and my podcast have so much value to offer right there. And I've interviewed experts, and one of them, Dr. Christopher Exley, it was called Mr. Aluminum. He has studied aluminums for specifically over 25 years, and he says that Alzheimer's is 100% preventable. And the reason is because so much of it has to do with aluminum toxicity. And that's where we naturally, again, detoxify, because these things will accumulate in the body and the brain. And aluminum also has a lot to do with speech. Now, I always tell parents, it's not just one thing. There are always multiple factors involved. And that's why, again, A to Z is so important. But there are some common things that we know right off the bat can help, and usually are common contributors to certain issues that a child might be having. But I still have them go in the order, because we've got to support the detoxification pathways first, because usually they're not working well, and the liver is congested, which is the organ of detoxification, is already backed up in these kids. So, you can't just throw in a bunch of detoxification because their body is not prepared yet. So we have to prepare the system and support it first, moving into then things that we do. And then candida overgrowth is so big, and parasites are huge too. So there's a gut issue going on beyond, and there are likely holes that have actually even been bored in the lining of the intestine that allow undigested food particles into the bloodstream. And when that happens, the immune system sees these markers, puts out these markers to attack these foreign agents, because it's not right. So then your child ends up having all of these acquired allergies because the immune system has become overactive. And that can cause even further problems, where I talked about PANS, which is where the immune system starts attacking the brain. It's just like, it just goes on. So you got to cover all of them.
Yeah, we could talk for hours. I have so many questions to go way beyond autism. But so let's just go back to autism for 1 second. So your program, parents get involved with it, and are schools supportive of everything that you're doing? Are they helping to create an environment, or is that still an opportunity area for you? Is that maybe like the next frontier, is getting programs like this and building awareness in schools?
Well, schools, I think that they're inhibited by the system and the government that controls them. And like, I've had parents have their child even try to take an enzyme or something simple at school, and then they have to go to the nurse's office, and then they have to get approval from the doctor, and who doesn't know anything, but all this stuff that's just ridiculous. So there's not a lot of help in that realm. Hopefully they've got a good, if they need it, IEP or 504 type plan for the child in place, so that they know that they need this extra help, and the child gets the support that they need at school. And staff, they could be willing, but they just don't know anything. So then they need to kind of be a little bit further educated. And it really depends on the school and the staff at that school. I have everything has happened. My members sharing that, their school's not supportive at all. They don't believe in a gluten-free diet, so they're just keep giving. Even at preschool, they just keep giving my child gluten, and I've asked them not to, and I've tried to tell them why. But and then others are like, well, the school's really trying to be helpful. So It just depends on the school, and and they're all different in their willingness and their education and abilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really come a long way, just the support system, the awareness of autism, the opportunities that are out there to educate yourself. And if people do want more information, I can't suggest more strongly than going to your website, naturallyrecoveringautism.com, or buying a copy of your book, which now, after our conversation today, was like the nail in the coffin that I think everybody on the planet needs to read this book because we all need to take better care of ourselves in general. And you seem to have figured out the absolute formula on how to do that. And imagine how much more productive we could all be if we weren't challenged with, issues related to our gut. But I think what you've done is so fabulous, just for your son, for your family, for the community, and just, putting the information out in the world. I'm so thrilled that you were able to come on the show today and be our guest. I don't know if you have any last thoughts or comments that you want to share with the audience.
I know you've asked a lot about diet, and parents wonder where to begin. So it might be helpful. I have a free downloadable guide to the top 7 foods to avoid to start reducing the inflammation and healing the gut. They're just kind of the top 7 to know about. So there's a direct link at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/7 foods. And that's also available on my website, which is naturallyrecoveringautism.com. But that can be really helpful for a place for people to begin. And then also, please utilize the resources on my website. And then if you get on my mailing list, then you'll be notified too. And I do I teach workshops, and then we'll open enrollment to the membership if people are interested in getting more guidance and help that way. So those are a couple of the resources for sure. And please, please, anybody listening to this, share with others that you know, because with 1 in 30 kids today being diagnosed with autism, most people either have a family member themselves or know of somebody who does have autism and is looking for natural and safe resources and the support that they are really, really needing. So please share it with others.
I love it. And I think, when this podcast goes live and you're all watching this, we're just going to continue to say, share, 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 help amplify the message that Karen's put together and the great work that she didn't realize when she was younger. She was growing up to be built just to do this and help really solve something that challenges so many of us. So, Karen, thank you again for being on the show, and let's get the word out.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks again, Jeannie.
That was awesome, right? I thought so. And I totally wasn't expecting half that conversation. And like always, I learned something new. One of the things I hope you can take away from today's conversation is this. There is no single path to growth, but there are great ideas that you can integrate into your own style. You know me, I'm a big fan of the AIR method: authenticity, inspiration, and relatability. And those are the patterns that will lead you to success. When you start noticing how people make decisions, how they pivot, lead, and handle those very real bumps along the way, the ones we all call life, you get much clearer about your own next move. And that's what we explore here on Liftoff Journeys and across everything we do at Liftoff Enterprises. We look at conversations, we do it through media and experiences designed to help leaders grow with more trust and confidence every day. If this episode resonated with you, there is more waiting for you. Whether it's another journey, a liftoff with Jeannie Weldon TV interview, or one of our liftoff spotlight episodes, find what speaks to you and use it to cross that trust threshold and go from stuck to unstoppable. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.